Hello again and welcome to the second instalment in the Topical Teamsheets Banter Signings mini-series. In this episode, we'll be taking a look at Chelsea's most ridiculous signings of the Premier League era. In goal is Robert Green, who obviously impressed tremendously during his single season at Huddersfield, where he made no appearances at all as the Terriers' number 3 goalkeeper, that somebody amongst new boss Maurizio Sarri and the Chelsea hierarchy deemed the former England international perfect to fulfil the same role at Stamford Bridge, which he did. After arriving on a free transfer, he stayed for the entirety of the 2018-19 season, again making no appearances, before retiring from the professional game altogether. Though I suppose playing no matches in your final 2 years as a professional must take its toll on you somewhere down the line, although I can't help but think that if he had been in goal for the 2019 EFL Cup final, that Chelsea may well have ended up winning it. Kicking off the defence is Baba Rahman, whose 23 appearances in all competitions perhaps don't quite justify the £14 million that Chelsea paid for him back in 2015. Of course, just about the only positive of being a youngster on Chelsea's books is that their high turnover of managers means that you get the opportunity to impress a new coach almost every season, though with each of Antonio Conte, Maurizio Sarri and Frank Lampard sending the Ghanaian out on loan without playing him in a single competitive match, perhaps that £14 million fee was a little overstated. Next up is Tal Ben Haim, whose public fallout with manager and fellow Israeli Avram Grant pretty much sums up his single Stamford Bridge season. Arriving on a free transfer from Bolton in 2007, Ben Haim himself was left feeling rather shortchanged after the departure of Jose Mourinho just a couple of months after he arrived, believing that it was down to Mourinho's replacement Grant that he fell down to fourth choice centre-back and nothing to do with the fact that John Terry, Ricardo Carvalho and Alex were above him in the pecking order, and was fined 2 weeks' wages for the privilege of publicly criticising Grant as the season drew to a close. That summer, Chelsea somehow made £5 million on Ben Haim as he was sold to Manchester City, having made just 13 Premier League appearances for the Blues. Alongside Ben Haim is Papi Djilobodji, who would have been this team sheet's second member of the no appearances club had it not been for the 60 seconds that he spent in a Chelsea shirt at the end of their League Cup third round victory over Walsall in 2015. The writing should perhaps have been on the wall when he was excluded from the club's 25-man Champions League squad just a day after signing for around £3 million. With quite a pattern emerging already, again he left after just one season, having spent the second half of that on loan at Werder Bremen. And if anyone's curious as to how the Senegalese career has gone since, perhaps the fact that he was sacked by Sunderland for breaching his contract and failing a fitness test after the Black Cats' relegation to League One, and that his debut for new side Guingamp ended in a 9-0 thrashing by PSG goes some way to summing it up. The penultimate defender is Slobodan Rakovic, who most certainly is the second member of the no appearances club, having spent all of his time as a Chelsea player on loan in the Eredivisie, where he remarkably won the title with both PSV and Steve McLaren's 20. FIFA banned the Serbian for 12 months after he spat at a referee at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, though he's perhaps lucky that he can use his failure to get a work permit as the official reason why he never got further than a pre-season friendly for the Blues. Rounding off the defence is Wallace, who's no doubt established himself as life president of the no appearances club following his barren 6 years at Stamford Bridge. Signed for a fee in the region of £5 million in 2012, he managed just 36 league appearances across 4 loan spells in as many countries before being released in 2017. He impressed so much in that time that he ended up without a club for a year and a half before joining Figueirense in the Brazilian second tier in January 2019, before being released again at the end of the year. On the right of midfield is Gael Kakuta, who was brought to Stamford Bridge in 2009 as a youth player in one of the most controversial transfers in British history. The Blues were the subject of a 2-window transfer ban by FIFA after being accused by Kakuta's former club Lens of tapping the youngster up. Kakuta himself was also banned for 4 months and ordered to pay Lens €780,000. Chelsea probably wouldn't have minded all the hassle had the native Frenchman actually delivered the goods, but 6 league appearances and no goals for the Blues, followed by 6 lukewarm spells, saw him released in 2015. The first of the centre midfielders is Danny Drinkwater, who is by far and away the most expensive and overpriced player in this team sheet, setting then champions Chelsea back a monstrous £35 million in 2017. Having won the league with Leicester the previous year, it's perhaps fair to say that his form at Chelsea has been less Claudio Ranieri and more Craig Shakespeare, with the three-time England international not having played for the Blues since the 2018 Community Shield, with both of their season's loans at Burnley and Aston Villa being marred by off-the-field controversy, leaving him with a total of 7 appearances in all competitions across the last 3 seasons. Next to Drinkwater is my personal favourite member of this team sheet, Winston Bogarde. With his CV including spells at Ajax, Milan and Barcelona, Chelsea must have thought that they'd grabbed bargain of the new millennium when they brought Bogarde to Stamford Bridge on a free transfer in 2000. Though they compensated for the lack of transfer fee by paying the Dutchman 40 grand a week. However, exactly 18 days after signing, the Blues appointed new manager Claudio Ranieri, who decided he wanted rid of Bogarde. Bogarde, however, was having none of it, and, realising that he would and should never get a contract of a remotely similar value at any other club, insisted on honouring the deal that he'd already signed, playing only one match between Boxing Day 2000 and the expiry of his contract in the summer of 2004, earning around £7 million in wages during that time, despite Chelsea trying everything in their power to get him to leave, including demoting him to the reserves and then the youth team. And, in arguably my favourite footballer quote of all time, Bogarde said, "I may be one of the worst buys in the history of the Premiership, but I don't care." Chelsea fans may beg to differ, but I reckon that in itself is worth £7 million. The fourth and final midfielder is Steve Sidwell, whose signing in 2007, even on a free transfer, I really can't explain. On arriving, he insisted that he wasn't there to make up the numbers, so you can imagine his surprise when he was continuously benched in favour of the likes of Claude Makelele, Michael Essien, Frank Lampard and Michael Ballack. 2008 was clearly a good year for Chelsea's finances, and, just like Ben Haim, Sidwell was shipped out after just a year for £5 million, joining Aston Villa. The sole striker is Robert Fleck, whose desire to join Chelsea was such that he threatened to go on strike at current club Norwich City in order to force through the move, which he eventually got in a £2.1 million deal in 1992, with the Canaries including a clause which meant that he couldn't play against them when the two sides met a couple of weeks into the new season. They needn't have bothered though, as the Scotsman would notch up just 4 goals in 48 Chelsea appearances, before being loaned out to lower league Bolton and Bristol City, eventually rejoining Norwich following their relegation in 1995 for significantly less than they sold him for. On to the manager then, and after briefly considering Avram Grant, I felt as though his second place finishes in both the Premier League and the Champions League meant that there could only be one candidate: Andre Villas-Boas. A former Chelsea coach under his compatriot Jose Mourinho, AVB arrived at Stamford Bridge as manager in 2011 on the back of his pretty perfect season with Porto. In fact, Chelsea paid £13.3 million to secure his services, which made him the club's second most expensive signing of the season, behind Juan Mata. However, barely 7 months into the season and the Portuguese was fired, with his side trailing the top 4, and, in the cruelest twist of fate, his assistant Roberto Di Matteo ended up taking charge until the end of the season, winning the FA Cup and Champions League. At least, Chelsea fans will always have AVB's Premier League Asia trophy to remember him by. Lastly then, to the subs bench. Providing backup for Rob Green is a Topical Teamsheets regular Mark Bosnich, whose drug scandal and eventual sacking requires no further repetition. The defensive reinforcements are Khalid Boularus and Nuno Moraes, who made 17 Premier League appearances between them, with Dutchman Boularus having cost the club £8.5 million, whilst at least Moraes arrived on a free transfer. The midfield replacements are Yuri Yarasic and Marco Marin, with the former's 14 league appearances in his only season at the club enough to earn him a winner's medal, despite spending the second half of it on loan at Birmingham, whilst Marin's biggest claim to fame is probably being the butt of Didier Drogba and Frank Lampard's jokes whilst they were on punditry duty at the 2018 FIFA World Cup. And finally, the substitute strikers Radamel Falcao and Franco De Santo. Chelsea showed the ultimate hubris in bringing Falcao to the bridge after his dreadful return of 4 goals in 26 Premier League games, whilst on loan at Manchester United the previous season, and were rewarded with an even worse goals to game ratio of just 1 in 10. De Santo, meanwhile, joined Chelsea for £3.3 million in 2007, scoring a grand total of no goals in 16 appearances before joining Blackburn on loan, where he fared slightly better, scoring just the once in 24 games. So that rounds off the Chelsea Banter Signings 11. The Banter Signings mini-series will continue in a fortnight's time, as the attention turns to my team, Manchester United. As always, comment below which changes you'd make, drop us a like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe to keep up to date with the latest content coming from the Football Games Room. I'll be back with Tom on Friday with Name Them All, whilst Topical Teamsheets resumes next Wednesday with the Premier League Retirement Home 11. Well, that's all from me, so have a good week folks, and I'll see you next time.